Local service ads are one of the top ways to really get a local business ranked and moving. Bryce Coleman from Magnetic Marketing SEO is kind of the master on this. I've been like learning from him a ton and I'm super blown away. Bryce, what are you doing with local service ads?
Yeah, local service ads is a hidden gem for a lot of industries. It's Google's pay per lead platform. You know, Google was jealous of Home Advisor and Angie's List selling leads all the time and wanted to get in on that action. So a couple years ago, they opened up their own, it's called the Local Service Ads Platform or the Google Guaranteed Badge. It's got a couple different names, also known as Google Screened. Depends on what industry you're in is the different name, kind of confusing to people, but it's a really, really good platform. It's based on, you pay only when you get a qualified lead. So if someone calls the ad, you might pay, whatever the rate is in that market. So here in Arizona for roofing, for example, it's like $70 per lead. 3 years ago, because there was only like 20 roofers doing it and no one knew about it, it was only $25 a lead. So it has gone up in price quite a bit.
Yeah.
But it's still really, really good ROI because you're able to dispute and get refunded on all the fake leads. Like if you have a scam caller or whatever, you don't have to pay for it. And you don't have to pay every time someone clicks on your ad, unlike PPC. PPC, you have to manage it actively, and you can waste a lot of money from people just, bots clicking on it or other people clicking on it who are just price shopping but don't actually call. But local service ads, you only, pay per lead. So it's way, way better for new companies. It's easy to manage, and it works really, really well, especially if you are willing to drive a range. Like if you're a lot of companies only want to get leads in the city because they don't want their guys, driving too far. So there a lot of times the outskirts, the little towns have only 2 or 3 people advertising in them. So if you're willing to do that, make your map target bigger, you can get a ton of leads for cheaper because it's not as many people competing and bidding on those leads. And it just works really, really well.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's say a company is like, this sounds amazing. I'm not doing this. I want you to do this, for me. What do they need to give you? What do you need from like a company to get them set up and started?
So it's super simple. It only takes maybe 20 minutes to do the initial setup. The only thing that is complex is the background check. So Google does background checks on every person who's only the business owner has to pass the background check. They're just going to check to see if you're a felon, if you've, had any big things.
Oh, that's crazy. That's interesting.
If you only had like a parking ticket or something, that's not going to flag it. It's totally fine. But that takes on average 2 weeks, and that's done through a third party called Evident. So that's the first thing we always do is we always send the background check. They have to upload a picture of their driver's license, give their social security number, and check that they're okay with the background check. It only takes a second, but that's the most urgent one since it takes the longest. It can take up to 2 months on the extreme scale, but usually it's around 1 to 2 weeks. And then other than that, they need a license. If their license is required in the state, they need to have a license.
Like driver's license?
No,
or
like a license to work as a general contractor license a lot of the time.
Okay.
Or whatever the license is that for their industry. And then they have to have insurance with a certain amount of coverage. The coverage is based on their industry. So like roofing is kind of expensive. So it's usually $1 million coverage.
Okay.
And sometimes I'll have to tell the client, hey, the coverage wasn't enough. You got to increase it before you can get approved.
Interesting.
And so Google, also interesting with this platform, that's pretty much the only requirements. They need to have, also they need to have a couple reviews.
Okay.
A Google business profile with 5 reviews is the requirement.
Okay.
If they don't have a Google business profile, a lot of people don't know this, but you can actually still set it up and then use the Google verified review link to get the 5 reviews and run them even without a Google business profile.
Oh,
so,
interesting.
Like, pretty much no one knows that. I don't know why, but I've set up like maybe 6 or 7 accounts that don't have Google business profiles because they couldn't get it for whatever reason.
Okay.
They don't have an office or something.
Yeah.
And you can still run the local service ads.
That's amazing. What kind of results are people seeing that are using this? Because I understand you've set this up for a lot of people. Like, what should they? I don't know. What do they typically expect? What do they typically see?
So because it has gotten really mainstream for a few industries, it's interesting because it rolled out kind of slowly in stages. Initially, they only had like general contractors, home remodelers and stuff.
Okay.
A couple years ago, and roofing. But they keep on rolling out new industries every month.
Okay.
And so like painting contractors is a new one that came out 2 months ago.
Okay.
And so no one in painting industry is using local service ads yet. The local service ad leads are still super cheap for painting. They're only $30. And so if you're a painter contractor, you need to get on local service ads now because you're going to get a ton of leads for super cheap. And so it's really interesting for me. Like I'll see, they added this category, and then I'll just call people like, hey, guess what? Like roofing is now available for Canada because it wasn't available for Canada up until a couple months ago. And like still most of the categories aren't available in Canada. It's mostly just US.
Okay.
But when it is, I should, tell everyone because it's going to be a super good blue ocean.
Yeah.
Because it's the very top listing in Google. It's above PPC ads. It's above maps. It's above everything. It's the very top thing because Google pushes it a lot. And it's also super, super valuable. Like Google, the guarantee part of Google actually insures every single job for the customers as well.
Wow.
And so it's really interesting. Like from a consumer perspective, I would want to use a Google guaranteed partner,
right?
Because their background check, I know their license, I know they're insured, I know that they have passed all these checks, they have good reviews, they're responding to messages quickly. That's the main ranking factor, and so they're a good company, and I'm sure of that because Google is guaranteeing it. And if I use them and they mess up for some reason, Google also has an insurance policy. Well, they'll pay me to fix their screw up. And so it's double insured. You know, they have the company insured and Google's insurance.
That's amazing. And my assumption is the sooner people get on this and start working on it, the better, because of course there's going to be competition and like whatever. But the more you're getting clients, and especially if you're getting them all to leave you reviews, like it's if you start today, you start growing your business listing today, right?
Exactly. It's a little bit different than SEO ranking factors. The main ranking factor for this one is response time. So they actually have a response time score, which is calculated based on how often you miss phone calls.
Interesting.
It's interesting because Google only is able to charge you if you get a real lead. So if you're missing the call, Google can't charge you. Obviously, Google wants to make money, and so they're going to put whoever's missing the most calls at the bottom of the list. If there's 200 people, you're number 200.
But also, that's the best like outcome for a consumer, because like I hate calling a place, and I've done it before where it's like a local business or whatever. I call them. And no response. And it's not like I'm going to call them back in half an hour. I'm just going to call the next person on the list. You know what I mean? It's like,
and so I think that's a great ranking factor. It is very frustrating though, because sometimes I'll have clients that didn't really understand that was the ranking factor, and they'll come to me like, "Oh, you missed 30 calls the last 2 months." Like,
right?
Dude, you're screwed. You know? And so I've got to start over. That's the thing.
With a brand new account.
You have to start a new account, re-verify everything, and get a fresh slate. Which we do that in a couple other circumstances as well, but that's one of the main reasons. The other thing is there's another type of lead. So there's phone call leads and then there's message leads. Message leads cost half the amount as phone call leads. So if in the average is $75 here for roofing, a message lead would be $30 or whatever. But the message leads usually aren't as high of conversion rate. Like the buying intent isn't always as good because they're just texting, usually asking a question. Hey, you know, but sometimes you'll get good leads. So that one is another one that people a lot of time mess up their account with. They'll have message leads on, but they don't have anyone signed into the app because it doesn't integrate with any third-party platforms or CRMs. You have to use the local service ads app to respond to messages. And a lot of companies don't and will just never respond to the messages in the app. And they'll call them sometimes to get the lead, but Google doesn't know that they called them. So Google thinks they never responded to this message. Their response time score goes down and their rankings tank. And so you have to be really careful if you have message leads on to make sure that you have someone who's always on the app and able to respond to messages within 30 minutes to an hour to keep the response time score up.
That's so fascinating. If people are interested in getting started with this, they want you to help them set it up. Where should they go to find you?
Yeah, so you can just search my company name, Magnet Marketing SEO. We have local service ads consultations, which are free. I'll do audits of the accounts, or we can actively manage it for you to make sure that, we'll have someone always on call, able to message people back within seconds so they don't mess up the ranking algorithm.
Amazing. This has been phenomenal, and I'm sure you'll leave a link in the show notes of your podcast episode here for people to go find the website. But super interesting. I think this is something everyone should really be starting.
Definitely. Yeah, it's the low-hanging fruit of marketing for local service ads. For local companies.